Good evening, everyone. It's Clyde Sharati here for this edition of Focus on Destiny chat. So I am again happy as usual to talk to you today about some section of the book. That is the book. I hope you have your copy. If you yet don't have one, I'm going to encourage you to get one. You just need to give us a call or send us a text message for the details that I'll be providing, and we'll be able to send you a copy of the book. Focus on Destiny is a very good book. I'm really glad that I'm getting a lot of feedback from people so far. Pretty much every feedback I've had is good. I'm looking for some not so good feedback, not because I want any negative feedback, but I want something that I can work on to improve next time, because there will be more books coming, and I want to be able to learn from the experience of this first book, because this is my very first book, and I would like to be able to get some feedback that will enable me to do better, even much better next time. So last time I was talking more generally. I summarized the 12 chapters of the book, the 12 words, the 12 keywords that were described and developed in the book. And I'm just going to read those keywords again. We have divine, design, desire, discover, decide, do, dominate, discipline, drive, destination, determination, and deployment. So these are the 12 keywords that were developed in the book. The first part of the book is the introduction, where we sort of lay some ground on some very important things that we need to understand, because it's important for us to know that we are in this world. We didn't make this world. We found it. We found ourselves living and existing. We have a designer of this world who made everything possible. And therefore, if we really want to live a fulfilled life, we ought to be able to align to the design of the maker. And it's something that is quite surprising to me, that some people think, okay, they can sort of make themselves God. They don't have to follow anything. It's like they have created themselves. They find the world, but they think they can do whatever they want to do. No, this world has been made by a designer who is an intelligent designer, who we call God. Some people may not necessarily agree with that. That's okay, because God doesn't need people to believe that He is God for Him to be God. But it is assumed that most of us in the Christian world, and because the book is primarily a spiritual book, but even though it's not limited just to the spiritual aspect of the book, but it's primarily a spiritual, to understand that we are part of a much bigger reality, and that we have to connect to the blueprint of the designer. If you find a house that has been built somewhere, you can assume that that house was somehow conceived. There was a draft, a blueprint that was put together in order for the house to be constructed. Now, even if it may not be a sophisticated house, the designer the person who built it may have had some sort of image in their mind of how they wanted to build it, how many rooms they want to put, where they want to put their bed or the kitchen or whatever. So that's kind of the framework that the introduction in the book is actually providing. Now, I'm going to encourage you watching there, if you have any questions, feel free to email. You can comment and you can ask questions, and we will try to answer. Please share the feed also on your platform, on your social media, so that more people will be aware of it. That reminds me, actually, myself, that I need to also be able to share the feed. So I will do that quite shortly. The introduction set the scene, so to speak, to get people to understand the design, to understand also the scriptures, like the gospel. What's the importance of it? It's about reconnecting us to God and to our own destiny, and that's very important. So, where are you now at the moment with your destiny? Do you believe you have one? Do you believe that you are actually actively connected into one? I see Peter Lualdeng there, who's made a comment. Thanks, Peter, for being there. Please share the feed. So in the introduction, we ask, what is destiny anyway? It's important to have a bit of an understanding what destiny is, and we're trying to find a definition that is as clear and as simple as possible. We say destiny is the combination of what happens to you, what you make happen, and what you fail to make happen. All of that constitute what your destiny is. And later on, we'll go into a bit more details. In the introduction, we also ask whether you are busy with your PhD. PhD stands for Purpose Driven and Heavenly Inspired Destiny. So our destiny has a purpose, and that purpose is heavenly established, and that is very important. But we also go to say that God is not religious, in a sense that even though it could be a contradiction in some minds, but it's actually clear that what God wants is leadership. He wants to lead us. He made us. He has a purpose for us. He wants to lead us so that we can meet that purpose. Religious understood as a set of beliefs and traditions is not really that what God is interested in. Although we have to believe, and there are things that we do to celebrate our beliefs, but what is more important for God is that we submit ourselves to His leadership, and that He takes us to where He expects us to be, and the things that we need to do in our lives. And we talked also in the introduction about Christian leadership and destiny living. It's important that when it comes to Christianity, the leadership has to focus more on helping people to discover who they are in the eyes of God, what is their destiny, and how to help them to get there. It's not so much about proclaiming every single day, God is good, God is great. All that is good. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. And it's not about miracles either. It's not about prophecies either. All these things have certainly some importance in the whole bigger picture of our relationship with God. But ultimately, God creates us for a purpose, and we have to be able to discover what that purpose is and then employ ourselves to make that happen. If we do all of these other things and we fail to meet the expectation that God has, for us to be able to achieve our destiny, then we would pretty much not meet. We would not satisfy God in that sense. If I create a machine, and let's say that machine, for example, can talk, and that machine can praise me every single day as the creator of that machine, but it doesn't actually do what I created it for, I don't think I'll be very excited about that. Now, we are not machine in any way. God gives us consciousness, and we are free being. But I hope you see the analogy. And another analogy is, if you go to work, you have a boss, and you go to that boss, and every day you say, boss, you're such a great man. You just praise the boss day in and day out, but you don't actually do the work that the boss wants you to do. I don't think the boss will be very impressed. And I think it's kind of the same with God. He wants us obviously to praise Him and worship Him, but we got to do the work that He's created us for. We got to achieve that purpose that He's given us life for. So these sort of set the scenes in the introduction, and gives us some sort of framework to work with as we go into the analysis of these 12 keywords. And again, the importance of the keywords is that they give us the keys to things that we ought to understand in order for us to be able to start making that journey towards our destiny. And I said this previously, that our destiny has actually already been established. So God doesn't do things and then He waits to today and tomorrow. God is not sort of confined in time. He's finished everything. It's up to us now to connect to His realm and be able to receive everything that He set for us. So we need to have the keys, because whatever He set for us is available, but it's not yet accessible until we have those keys. And these words are supposed to give us those keys that we need to have in order to access these things that He's prepared for us. So if you prepare yourself with the understanding that the best version of you is already there somewhere, and you have to find it and to incorporate it into the you today, because what you are today is not necessarily what you're going to be tomorrow. What you're going to be tomorrow could be a higher and a better version of you. But you need to find the keys to open that up. Otherwise, you don't get it. It's in the same, for example, in the IT industry, we have different versions of the same software that keeps being released, and these versions are better. They are more secure because the designer discover some little issues here and there. So the analogy can also be used in the spiritual. Not that God discovers any error in us, but in a sense that the best version of you is yet to be materialized in physicality. But in order for you to be able to get there, you have to have the right keys to be able to access the right type of knowledge, wisdom, and be able to incorporate those things in you, and that helps you to become the best you can become. So that's kind of a bit of a summary on the introduction. And I see the comment from Peter: monitor and audit your own decisions and your thought process. How often can one audit the decision? Okay, that's a very good question. I'll answer that a little bit later, but we ought to be able to audit our own thoughts. And by the way, just to drop something in that specific comment from Peter, we are thinking every day. Thinking is something that we do actually every day, and it is the thing we do the most in our lives. Apart from when we're sleeping, we're always thinking. We was thinking, what's the next step to take? What was the next thing to do? Now, and the Bible says that you are what you think. So the best version of you will depend on the best thinking system in your mind, in your spirit, and you ought to be able to monitor, because we start thinking from a very young age. We learn, from our parents, from the society, from our culture, from school, and all these other things. They sort of train us to think, but that sort of thinking is not necessarily what we need to continue with in order for us to get the best version of ourselves. So at some point, we need to look at everything that is part of our cognitive infrastructure. I would call it like that. Cognitive infrastructure is all those things that help you to think the way you think, and you need to have to audit it, look at it. Why am I thinking the way I am? Am I too emotional? Am I too rational? Am I this? Am I that? And why do I tend to do X, Y, Z? What are the things that influence my thoughts? Because sometimes, you can find yourself. The trouble is, many times people don't actually they are not aware of their thinking. All of us, a lot of times, we are not aware of our thinking. We just think because it's like breathing. You don't always realize you are breathing, but you are breathing every single day. But the moment you start putting more attention to your breathing, and then you start realizing that it's actually very important for your life. If you stop breathing, you'll be in trouble. And the moment you start realizing you are thinking, then you are in a better position to try to improve your thinking. So and our spirit, which is the higher form of our mind, is inviting us to elevation. So you have to elevate your thinking, not to think like little kids, and which is why in the Bible, Paul says that we should not just be fed with milk. There's a time where we need to be fed with solid food. So we can't continue to think in a very primary way. We have to elevate our ways of thinking. We have to elevate our ways of doing things. So that's just a bit of a quick answer to Peter's mention there. So I'll go to chapter 1 as we start going into this. Now, what I'm going to do today is just give a brief understanding of the 12 chapters, Last time I just talked about the keywords, but right now I'm going to go into a little bit of the chapters, and then once we finish that, in the next episode we'll start going a little more deeply in every chapter. So the first chapter, which is the first keyword, is about the word divine, and the idea is to say that we have to realize that we have a divine DNA, because we are product of a divine manufacturer, the divine creator that gives us life. As I said earlier, none of us created ourselves. We found ourselves existing, and we exist because of a whole set of mechanisms that have been set in place long before we ever existed. None of us know how this world came to be. Even scientists who pretend to know, they actually don't. Which is why they come up with changes all the time. At some point, the scientists didn't believe that the universe actually started before the Big Bang Theory. It was always believed that the universe has always been there, until evidence became clear that no, there was an end, a beginning, and an end. So the scientific sort of evidence keeps changing. It's a transitory knowledge; is never set. But the truth of the scriptures remain stable, remain what they are. They don't change. So we ought to understand that we are from a divine source. And because we are from a divine source, we have that divine DNA in us. That means we are set from the get-go to actually have a divine existence on earth, as long as we realize and understand who we are. So this is about our identity. Our identity is connected to our Father, to our Creator. You see, a child is born, and their identity, both in terms of biology, and so the whole of the genetic code is actually inherited from the father and the mother. So the parents give the child the genetic code, so that the child can have a body put together. The spirit is something else. The parents don't create the spirit; they only help to put the body together through the genetic mechanisms. But the spirit that is in us is a spirit that comes from a divine source, and we ought to be able to realize that once we build confidence in our identity, then we are in a better position to actually do a whole lot of things. You see, children of royals, like royalties, from the very beginning, they are taught to that they are royals, and they trained to act, to think, and to do everything like royals, and they end up definitely becoming royals. So it's kind of that same thing in the spiritual sense as well. If we realize that we are from a royal origin, so our father is a king, and that we are here on earth, we have that power, we have that identity, and then we are in a much better position to actually realize and accomplish many things. This is really quite important to understand our identity, knowing that we are much more than what we can see. We are much more than what our environment, our family, our community tell us that we are. That's the deeper part in us that is authentic, that is divine, that is unlimited, that is very powerful. As long as we're able to connect to it, the difficulty comes that as we are born as children, we obviously have a clean slate. We don't know anything. We are oblivious to everything that is around us, and then we start learning things. And as we learn, we are stuffed with a lot of things that are not necessarily meant to help us. So at some point, we need to remove all of this, which is why in the Bible, Jesus speaks of a new birth. So for you to really discover the best version of you, you need to be born again, in a sense that your identity has to be reframed completely. And that is very important, and that can only be done from that divine understanding of things. So we have a divine origin and a divine identity, and that means that we also have a divine provision. What I mean by provision is that he who gave us life as human beings also has given us a number of assets that we need to utilize in our earthly existence. We have many assets, starting from our body. Our body is an asset, because in the physical world, you got to use the body. You got to use the body to walk, to eat, to work, to do a lot of things, to have feelings and sensations that are part of the human experience. That is an asset. But then there's also the mind that is connected to the body, but the mind helps us to conceptualize things so that we're able to understand not only that we exist, but we exist in a bigger whole, a bigger ensemble, and there's a whole lot of things around us that we need to connect with, we need to relate to, we need to engage with, and all these things are very, very important as we understand things. So we are divinely made to impact and dominate the world. Again, that's something that is very important, because from a Christian perspective, we know that even though there's evil in this world, even though there are people in this world who may want to harm us, and there are things that may want to divert us to the trajectory that has been set for us from a spiritual standpoint. But he who has given us life, he who is our Father, will help us to stay connected to his trajectory, to his destiny, to his purpose, as long as we remain connected to him. So that's the first chapter about being connected to the divine. So we need to understand the divine nature of our life, and then be able to take that as we understand our identity, we understand its strength, its power, we have that confidence, and then we go into the world and try to make things happen. Confidence is very important. You may be very smart, but if you don't have confidence, you may not be able to utilize that intelligence in the best possible way. So this understanding of our identity and the divine nature of it is actually very, very important, and that's the first chapter. Later, we'll go into we'll go into more details as we come back. The second word is design, and it says that you are designed as an instrument of God for his will and purpose. Your destiny is connected to the bigger design. I think I said that before. And you also have that design capability, because I call on a spiritual level, I call God as the biggest engineer of all time, because he engineered the whole of the world. Just imagine how much engineering power it will take to design the whole world. It will take so much in the engineering brains that put all the engineers that have ever existed together. They will never be able to come up with something as beautiful as the whole universe, as the world, as life. So we have been part of this whole design, but we also have the capability of designing on it. In fact, we have been given the freedom to be able to design our future, but we design it with the material that we get from the one who is the original designer of everything. If you use your own material to design your own future, well, that's not guaranteed, because you don't necessarily know. When a designer designs something, for example, even a house, well, there are a lot of materials that go into the construction of a house, and you need to understand which material will work with what. Bricks will work with mortar, and plaster will work with wood, and all that sort of thing. So if you don't understand the material that you are working with, well, your house is going to crumble very quickly, because you'll be suddenly violating some of the rules, the chemical and mechanical rules that need to be maintained to be able to put things together. So you need to understand that if you want to put your future together, because we have that ability to design our earthly future, our earthly destiny, but we got to use the supernatural material. In fact, even simple things, and again, I will use very simple example, like a house. I was having a chat with somebody before, and I said even a house has a supernatural origin, because it's the ideas that we use to build a house, they come from our head. But if I cut your head, I won't see any idea in there. You will see blood and gray matter. You won't see anything. But there is something that we call idea that is actually supernatural. It works with the natural, but it is from a supernatural origin. So we need to understand again that what they call the dichotomy between the natural and the supernatural. There are things that work with on the basis of natural laws. We need to follow those laws, and there are things that work with the supernatural laws. We need to know those rules, and abide by them. If we do that, our life will be much simpler. So, in the design concept, you ought to be able to reflect where you want to take your life, how you're going to design that path for fulfillment, because you are expected by the designer, the creator, to walk that path that he's set for you. But he's not like just imposing on you that you got to do X, Y, Z. He's giving you that ability to conceptualize and to seek to find the right thing and then connect to it. So the beautiful things between us and God is that He doesn't impose anything, and He doesn't frame us. Like if we create a robot, that robot is limited to the framework of that computer. It will never go anywhere beyond that, unless obviously we are always reconfiguring the actual robot. But in the context of human beings, uh, we have been given that total freedom of being able to think, because we are created in the image of the creator, who is able to think, to design, to create, to make things happen. We too have that ability, albeit very constrained, because there are limits that we cannot go beyond, given that obviously we are not God, we are human beings. But we have that limited capacity to design, to create, to make things happen. But we need to be able to understand the design principles that make this world to go what it is. If you violate the design principles of life, of the world, you end up with being in a lot of trouble. So it's good to understand these things from the scriptures. From science helps too, to understand the natural laws. These are very, very important. So when you think of destiny, you can't just limit yourself to your understanding and your knowledge of the scriptures. The natural world exists, and we are living in the natural world. It pays to actually know the design principles and the actual realities of the natural world. If you know them, they're going to help you, and you can use them for your advantage. Otherwise, if you keep violating laws that have been established by the creator, and then you end up being in trouble for sure. So that's the design aspect, that the second chapter, which is about design. As I said, we're going to go into a little bit more details in future episodes. So the next chapter is about the desire. Desire is very important, because we experience happiness, we experience life as we know it through the desires. It's through our desires that we get to want to do things, we get to want to achieve XYZ, we experience happiness, and all that sort of thing. So the fulfillment comes through the desires are very, very important, and all of the God's desires, so to speak, God's willingness in our life is they actually embedded in our desires. We have holy desires and not so holy ones, because the human mind is capable of so many good things as well as so many bad things. It's both ways. I remember I was having a conversation with someone about what the Red Cross does, and the Red Cross says that one of their motto is about the power of humanity. And during that conversation, I was telling him that, okay, the power of humanity, it was, can you explain to me what that means? He's talking about the power of human's heart to help others. And I said, okay, that's good, because when you just say power, that power can be both negative and positive. And God knows how many humans have used their power so negatively by killing others, by making others suffer, doing all types of hideous things. So the mindset that we develop, it usually comes through the desires that we have sought to satisfy over and over. Let me take the comment from Peter. Say, human has to develop a secular mindset, which has led to crises in many parts of the world because of the power struggle. And in your book, you talk about managing your desires. What can we do to control our passions? Yeah, yes, it is very, very important. And I'll try to answer your question. The first thing we need to do in order to control our passion is first understanding the whole mechanics of desires and passion. Where do our desires come from? uh, Again, these are not some, these are not the things we think on a day-to-day basis. But the moment we start paying attention of where are uh, some of these things coming from, that's when we start taking a little bit more control over where are our desires come from. And when we have these desires, what are we trying to achieve? So if you start questioning not just the source of your desire, but the motivation behind it, and you have a clear path where you want to lead yourself, where you want to go, it start becoming a little bit easier to monitor your desire, because your desires will drive you places that will take you to particular directions. And if you know already that you are going, for example, if I know that I'm going to the city, and then another desire, I'm already in my car and I'm driving, another desire comes and tells me to go north while the city is east. I will start thinking, hey, my destination is in the city. Yes, maybe I'm thinking of going this other direction. Is it the right thing for me to do? I say no, because right now what I want to go is go to the city. But if your vision for reaching that city destination is not strong enough, then whatever other desires comes as you travel may actually divert you away from that. So the strength of your destination, what you want to do, you want to be able to achieve the best version of you as set by the designer, as set by God. And if that desire is very strong to get there, then it will have more power to it will overpower many of these other desires. The problem is we tend to be very distracted a lot of times, which is why this book says focus on destiny. Just when you start focusing on your destiny, on your future, on your legacy here on earth, you building power to be able to resist many of the other desires that will certainly come along the way. Because remember, whether it's evil or good, they are all desires. They just the direction that they are going that makes a difference between what good and what evil is. Even when we talk about God and the devil, they all want to have access to our desires, because they know that they will drive us to a particular direction to do things based on the desires that we are able to have in our hearts. So to summarize, it's sort of a long answer to your question, Peter. But first, understand your identity and your vision, and where you are going. That's number one. And then understand how the desires are coming into your mind. In the book, I talked about some desires just dropping into our mind from nowhere. This is my experience for sure. When I monitor some of my thought and my desires, I'm trying to find out, where did this idea come from in my mind? Because I could be doing something, and all of a sudden something else comes into my mind, or I may be praying, and then another very hideous idea comes into my mind, and I'm trying to think, hey, hang on, where did this thing come from? Sometimes I can retrace where the idea come from, because I may have seen a picture, and that picture takes me to something that happened in my life 10 years ago, and I go back into that environment very unconsciously, and very quickly I start reliving some of that experiences there, and I realize, okay, this is where this desire or this idea come from. But then other times I wouldn't retrace those ideas, and I know they've been sort of dropped in my mind from someplace. It could be the devil, it could be God, and it depends what type of the desires they are. But then when I realized that, I started now to think, okay, what do I do with this desire? What do I do with this idea? Do I give it life? Do I feed it, or do I kill it? So whatever you feed, well, you will give life, and whatever you stop feeding will die. So when the desires come into our consciousness, we realize that, okay, this is happening. What do I do? Do I drop it? Do I starve it? Do I feed it? And that's how you move forward. So the mindset that people have is because we collect desires from everywhere, the media, the television, technology, books we read, the people we hear, or, all these things that we hear from all sorts of sources, and it goes into our mind, and we don't know necessarily control how this is organized. from this. And I, I like what Peter says. Some of these things are from the bush. Yes, you can take the boy out of the bush, but it's very hard to take the bush out of the boy. So that's the job that we all need to do. If you've come from the bush, you need to really do a lot of work to take the bush out of you. This is a work of learning and unlearning. You learn new things and you unlearn the old ones. And there is a spiritual bush as well, where which is filled with wild animals that will come and kill you spiritually. So we got to take these things out of our mind. It's obviously something very, very important that we need to focus on. Now, again, I will not go into too much details of this. I'll go to the next chapter, which is about discover. So we need to be able to understand that we have a destiny, and we need to. It has already been established by the designer who gave us life, and who knows what he expects from us. But we need to discover what it is. Part of it is we discover. Another part is we need to design and make happen. We'll discover what has been established in heaven, but God doesn't do anything here on earth in the physical realm without the contribution of man. God gave us what we call the agency. That is the ability to be able to do things, the ability to achieve things. You know, if you are very familiar in the Bible, a lot of examples where even when Moses was taking the Israelites out of Egypt and going back to the promised land, a lot of time, if they needed to do something, God would always ask you, "What have you got?" Even when it was about to separate the Red Sea, God asked Moses what he had in his hand, and he had this rod. It has to strike on the water. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say here is there is something that God wants you to do in everything that is going to happen in your life. There are things that He has, but that has to be connected with what you have, so that these things can work. So our destiny has two parts: the part that we discover, because that is God's responsibility in our lives, He has set it up for us, and then there's the part that we actually create and design, because it is our responsibility on earth, in the physical world, to do things that align with the will of God in order for that to manifest in the physical world. So I talked about the three dimension of destiny, and here I'm trying to define actually what destiny, in a sense that some people think destiny is fate. Fate in a sense that it's been set, there's nothing that we can do to change it. So that's what it's called, fate. But that's not the whole picture. There are things in our life that we cannot change. We have to accept. I have to accept that I'm an African. My skin is black. I'm male, and I have the parents that I have. I can't change them. These are things that I cannot change. They're already there. By the time I realize that I exist, all these things are already there, and I cannot change them. Which is why it's so funny that people today want to change from male to female. Well, you can cut, you can mutilate yourself, you can do whatever you want to do biologically, but you remain whatever gender you were born at birth. You can do all these things, but it's not really going to change you fundamentally. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into this. Just an example. So the second part is that our destiny is what I call shape. Is this dimension is what we can actually do to shape our own destiny. The things we can do to give some sort of shape to our lives, and that is very, very important. And then there's what I call escape. There are things that will escape us in our life, either because of ignorance or because of laziness and all that. So that's also part of our destiny that we actually miss because we were lazy or we were ignorant, which is why we have the responsibility to develop ourselves, to learn, to renew our minds, so that we're able to understand the world better. We understand the spiritual and the supernatural world better, in order for us to be able to connect to it and be able to make things happen. If we let too many things escape us, obviously we're not going to be able to achieve our destiny. So discover what God has set for you, and then go ahead with that. Use that in order to design and create the earthly reality that God wants you to do here, so that you can do what you have been created to do. The next chapter is decide. Now, decision making is one of the most important faculty that we are given as human beings. We're able to make big decisions in our lives. We're able to change our lives dramatically through the decisions that we make. This is very, very powerful stuff. If we understand it, we can use it to improve our lives very significantly. We can use it to connect to the designer and to receive whatever we need to get from him in order to manifest his will and his purpose in our lives here on earth. But we can also use the same power to walk away and literally be lost. When we walk away from the design, the original design, we ultimately setting ourselves for failure, because we are we are walking astray. So decision making is very important. Procrastination is killing people today. People, they don't decide much anymore. We always thinking, okay, I will do this tomorrow, I'll do that the next day. Before you know it, we don't do it. So when you have a good idea that comes to your mind and you believe that is very important for your destiny, well, make the decision there and then that you want to do something with it. You may not start immediately, but you will need to have some sort of plan. Say, I decide today that I will do X, Y, Z. Write your decision down and then see how you can then draw a whole plan, so how you can put it all together. So willpower is the biggest form of power that we are given as human beings. We need to decide to take ownership of our life and commit to our destiny living. We need to decide to submit to the leadership of God, of Jesus, in order to develop the right mindset for our destiny, and decide to focus more on deployment rather than employment. And this is also very important here, because as human beings, we spend a lot of time in our lives being employed, making money to survive. Now, it is very important, obviously, to have resources to live on, but most of us take jobs and spend years and years doing jobs that we don't really like, but we have to do it because that's the only way to pay our bills. So we ought to be able to use our decision to say, I don't want to be a slave in an employment system. I want to be free I want to go into a deployment system where I have something in me I want to take out, and that will create the resources for me, and I will live through those resources, but I will live as a free individual. The employment model, the employment system, is actually killing a lot of people's destiny. We spend so many hours, 10 to 12 hours every day, going to work, making money, yes, but then not doing much after that. We don't really question whether what we do as work is actually really what we would like to be able to do, and that's part of the legacy we want to leave. We just go there because, well, that's the system, the way it's set. You got to find some work, you got to make some money, you got to pay bills, and in the end we end up living a life where we just pay bills. People who are focused on their destiny, they don't want to spend their life just paying bills. You find a way of using your time to be able to do the things that you believe that are in line with your purpose here on earth, and your decision making power is going to be very important in helping you to achieve that. So decide that you want to focus on your destiny and implement the decisions that you need to implement in order to get there. The next chapter is do. Well, if you decide that you want to do something, then go ahead and do it. Action is the most important thing. Even in the Bible, it says, excuse me, faith without action is dead. Well, it is dead if there's no action. Anything that doesn't move end up dying. If you want to stay alive, you got to keep moving. In fact, dying is simply when you can't move anymore at all, nothing in your body. Even when they check to make sure you are dead or alive, they will check whether your pupils, when they put lights on it, if it moves or not. So movement is what defines life. Movement, action. Even when you have a baby for the first time. I remember when I took my wife to go to do an ultrasound for our firstborn. It was actually quite early. There was no real profile of a human being yet, but there was some movement, and that was the heart beating. So that movement shows life. Life is connected with movement, and movement is action. So you got to do things. A lot of us don't do what we know. We know a lot of things, but we don't do what we know, and that is an issue. So if you know things, you've learned, you've discovered what God wants you to do, then go ahead and do it. Even if it may not be easy, but go ahead and do it. Doing is very, very important. Then the next chapter is about dominate. Now, from the get-go in the Bible, God gives dominion, power to humanity over everything else. So this is a very important in the sense that we have to dominate. Now, this domination has nothing to do with exercising power over other people. This domination is actually dominating through leadership and service. So if you have what has been planted in you, you know that you want to give a meaning to your life based on what you've been able to capture from the supernatural, and you're able to apply in the natural. And then you go ahead, you want to dominate your field, whatever field you are in, whether you are in you are a doctor, you are an engineer, you are whatever field you are in, seek to dominate, because you have the mandate, you have the spiritual blessing to dominate. Dominate through excellence, dominate through leadership, dominate through service. This is very, very important. Those of us who want to really pay attention to our destiny, we are driven by the desire to dominate by showing love, by showing excellence, by showing leadership. When you see things that are not working, that's a sign that your leadership may be needed. You need to go there and help with that leadership. You need to dominate with whatever that is in you, and that is very, very important. It's not egoistic domination, such as a dictator dominating others. It's more about showing so much of something good that you end up dominating, because nobody else is able to get to that level. So we have that mandate to dominate through excellence, leadership, and service, and that is very, very important. So the next chapter is discipline. Now, you may know a lot of things, you may do a lot of things, but if you lack self-leadership, more likely you end up being in trouble. Now, before I go further, let me just take another comment from Peter, who says, I'm learning a lot from you, from your book, Clyde. Thanks for making it available. This book is helping me in decision making and decision auditing. Thanks, Clyde. Yes, thanks God that it is at least helping you. Discipline is very important, and I'm talking more about self-discipline, because if we don't have self-discipline in our lives, it means we are prone to any type of desires and any type of distractions that is going to divert us away from where we want to go. When you see people like champions, when they want to achieve something, they say, I want to get an Olympic medal, so I need to train so that I will be able to actually excel and get that medal. And then they go into that intensive training, and nothing will distract them. They impose themselves self-discipline, that I will train 5 hours a day, I will train 6 days a week, and I will continue to do that until the time for competition. It's kind of like that. When we know that we've got something that we need to deliver here on earth before we depart, because we will all depart, we have to leave a legacy, and we want to really be able to work on our legacy, so that when we're gone, people would say, okay, this man has tried, or this woman has tried to do something. We have the light that we receive from the supernatural realm, from the divine source, and we get a picture, a clear picture of who we are and what we're supposed to do. Then we go ahead and do that. But discipline will enable us to impose ourselves the type of restrictions that we need in order to achieve particular goals. It will help us to not be too much diverted by many, because distraction is very, very, so attention, we are losing a lot of attention capability in today's generation, and I am guilty of that as well. When you have your mobile, every 5 minutes you have to check because there's notification, and even scientists are actually raising an alarm for attention deficit disorder. I call that DAD. This is attention deficit disorder. And it is important for us to realize that we need to be able to focus if we want to be able to achieve our goals. And only by imposing ourselves a lot of discipline that we are going to be able to do that. Nobody is going to be watching us every single minute, but we can impose our self-discipline and make sure that if we set to do something, we do it. If we know we can't do it, we leave it. Even in our relationship, if somebody is causing you more trouble, and then you have to have the discipline to potentially break that relationship, or find a way to isolate or insulate yourself. It's not always the best idea to isolate yourself from people, but you need to know how to insulate yourself from bad influence. So self-discipline will help us with all those things. And again, we'll have time to go into more of those things, what we need to do to develop self-discipline, so that we are able to be driven. Many people know many things. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't is that those who succeed are able to impose themselves some sort of discipline to be able to utilize whatever knowledge and skills and assets they have to be able to develop that and achieve success. So it's not so much about what you know. It's also about how you use what you know and how you frame your life in light of that knowledge. And self-discipline obviously is very important in that aspect. So the next chapter is about what I call drive. What is driving you in your life? What is your main motivation? A lot of us don't always ask ourselves those questions. What is driving us? Why do we do the things we do? How you're spending a lot of time, for example, going to work. Is it really the work that you want to do all of your life, or would you like to do something else? Now, are you doing something to try to change that, or you are too afraid to quit that job because you're not sure whether you're going to get the next job? What are you doing with your family? What are you doing with your community? Whatever that is of interest to you, you're looking at the motivation. What is driving us in our lives will determine where we are going, because we are on some sort of journey, and that journey is determined by the progress that we make. And the progress we make will be dependent on what is driving us. What are the forces that actually driving you? Are you more prone to listening to negative forces or positive forces, God's voices, or the devil, and all that sort of thing? So just looking at your motivation, what is motivating you, and how you can improve your motivation. Whatever you want to do, you can succeed by doing it if you have sufficient motivation to keep on doing it. So studying your self-motivation, we talked about self-discipline. Drive is about self-motivation. How do you increase and develop your motivation for the things that you want to do, and how you want to reduce the motivation for anything that will drive you away from where you want to go. And the book talks about many of these things in terms of that particular drive. Now, if you are driving and going someplace, you got to have a destination. So that the next chapter is about destination. We need to be clear where we are going. And then we need to utilize whatever asset, whatever resources we have. If you're driving a car, you are going to the city, as I said earlier. Well, you need to be able to, push the accelerator, maintain your hands in the wheel, respect the speed, the speed signs and all that. So you use your hands, your head, your feet, your body, all of these things to drive and keep going, but need to be clear on the destination, so that when there is an exit that is not yours, you don't need to go there. You keep going. But when you get to your exit, okay, this is where I'm going. I need to exit here. I need to turn right. I need to turn left. So it's very important for us to have a clear image, a clear picture of our destination. Where do you want to take your life? Do you have any clarity on that? Has God told you anything about where you want to take that life? Are you asking God? Are you asking yourself? Are you examining yourself to understand fully where you want to go? Because if you have no idea where you're going, then anywhere is okay. If you don't know where you're going, well, you're totally lost, because obviously you have no idea where you're going. That's very important. The next chapter is about determination. Now, if you are going someplace, obviously there will be challenges along the way. Challenges and problems are part of life. You cannot avoid them. And as long as you have this physical body, you will always have problems every day. What you need to do is to start choosing your problems, choosing the problems that you know you need to have in order for you to be able to resolve whatever issue and be able to make progress. So you need to be determined. Things you may fail, you may fall, but you can rise up and keep going. Because it's not it must expect that there'll be a lot of challenges in our lives. There will be times where we won't be able to succeed for XYZ, but we need to remain determined and keep going despite the difficulty. And that is very important in life, because nobody just cruises their life all their life long. Even Jesus, when he was on earth, before he went on the cross, he almost, he asked his father to take the cup away. That was challenging as a human being. So everybody will have these issues, but you ought to be able to remain determined and keep going to your destination. And the next chapter, which is the final one, is about deployment. And again, deployment here is that when we come on earth, we are like a one-man army. You've heard of a one-man band, but I'm talking to you about a one-man army. One-man band is somebody who both they sing, they play the drum, and they do a whole lot of things, but they still manage to do all of that. So, but in terms of our destiny, we're kind of a one-man army, because life is a struggle, is a battle. You have to fight, and you are one-man army, but you are not alone, because the provider, the creator, is with you as long as you remain connected with him. So you need to deploy everything. So, when we talk about deployment, it's usually used for army that go into some sort of mission abroad. They say the army has been deployed, but you have been deployed here on earth to achieve a particular mission, and you need to make sure that you deploy that. Don't just go and keep on developing your career without necessarily understanding that you've got a particular mission that you have been created for and need to achieve. It's like somebody going into a foreign country as a spy, but they wouldn't be able to work until first they settle, and then they start doing the work for their master. But when you get there, you start enjoying life so much, you forgot about the whole mission that you went there for. That's what happens many times for many of us. We come on this earth, we tend to enjoy a lot of things, but we forget about the mission for which we have been given life. And that's very important. So we need to be able to deploy. We've got gift, we've got skills, we've got talent, we've got a whole lot of assets. Each and every person is original, and they have specific things that no other person does. And every person has been created with a particular thing that they need to do in their generation that nobody else can do. So even if, because sometimes we think destiny is just this big thing. No, it may not. You may be just a housewife, and you have 2 children. Your destiny could be just making sure that you raise those two children, because these 2 children have some sort of mission that they need to accomplish, and you being a good mother to them is something very good. You may not achieve anything significant. You may not even buy a house. You may not do anything that is so sophisticated. But the fact that you are taking care of these 2 children that you've been given, and you help them to become mature, responsible, and conscious beings, then they go on to do what perhaps God wants them to do, or maybe not even them. They may be the channel through which somebody else does something else. So we really don't have the full picture of whole life, but what we need to do is just be able to be very clear on what God wants us to do, because He is the designer of life, and we are product of His design. We are product of His creative powers, and we need to connect to the design that He has for us, and then be able to run our lives. We have the facility. I mean, we do have the ability to be able to do all things that we can think of, as the Bible says, possible for those who believe. What do you believe about your destiny? What do you believe about your life? Do you have any idea? Well, that is in a bit of a very quick summary, going into the the chapters, what this book is about. We're just about to get to the full hour, and this session tonight is for those 4 hours. I want to thank Peter, who's been asking questions and making comments. Other people have just been watching, which is all okay. Every particular chapter, the first chapter being the divine key that we need to have. We'll go into more details to look at what are some of the tools that we can use. What are some of the pieces of wisdom that we can get that can help us to better understand our identity and what role we have to play in the bigger scheme of things. So that is all for tonight. I want to thank you for your time, and again, I say, if you haven't yet had a chance to get your book, you can order one. If you are in Australia, just send us a message with your details. We can organize to get one book shipped to you immediately. And if you're overseas, you can order through Amazon, because it's cheaper to order through Amazon if you're overseas. But if you're in Australia, it's cheaper to buy the book from us. And not only it's cheaper, it's also faster if you send a message. I'll put the number is 0437 724469. I repeat, 0437 724469. Thank you very much and have a good night. It's 10 p.m. already, so I imagine many people will be sleeping. Thank you very much. God bless you all.